It was probably 2 or 3 a.m. I just woke up in the middle of the night for no reason. It's pretty normal for me to do that. I then just need 15 minutes to fall asleep again. While I was waiting to fall asleep again, I heard my room door open and somebody come in. I have a wooden floor. That would make a creaking sound at the smallest things, so you can pretty much hear a mouse running around. So little was necessary to creak that wooden floor. First, I thought that it was my roommate. He sometimes comes into my room to steal one of my cigarettes. Well, I never caught him doing that, but I'm pretty sure he does it. So I was ready to confront him. So I was waiting for him to do something so I can spot him on the act. So I was waiting and waiting, but he didn't do anything. While he was waiting, my brain that was still a bit sleepy remembered something. My roommate wasn't in the house that day. He told me he was going to a party and then sleeping at a friend's. So I thought, shit, a burglar. And I calmed down and thought it through. Maybe he came back home because his friend didn't want him at his house. Or he has somebody else over. But why is he in my room and just standing there? Is he drunk and is he doing some weird things? Maybe took something and now acting weird? Well, now I was concerned he would do something stupid. So I was about to turn around until I felt a warm breeze on my neck. It felt like somebody was breathing on my neck. I was frozen, goosebumps all over my body. He must have moved and is now breathing down my neck. My bed is in the other corner of my room. He at least had to take 3 steps to do this. But I didn't hear anything. But I still tried to think rationally. Maybe it's just a breeze. It is the summer and I'm sleeping with my window open. It's probably just a breeze. But there was still the problem of my drunk roommate on drugs, or a burglar, so now I had to find out what it was. If it was my roommate on drugs, help him. If it was a burglar, just take whatever you want. I'm going to pretend I'm sleeping. So I made a move to turn around. I was sleeping on the side, my back turned against the door, so I had to do a full 180. While I was halfway turned, I just felt terror, like pure fear. My survival instinct said to me, do not turn around or you will die. I have no idea why I'm thinking that, but it takes my whole willpower not to start shaking out of fear. Because my survival instinct also said, if you move, you are dead. I didn't know what was happening. My brain was thinking what it is that is giving my body so much terror. Without even seeing it, but there was nothing. It didn't make sense. Am I having a panic attack? But why now? I had panic attacks in the past, but they didn't feel like this. I just knew with every fibre of my body, as soon as I moved, this thing would kill me. So until 5 a.m., I was just laying there, full with fear, until it just vanished. All of my fear was gone, like that. As soon as I opened my eyes, I looked at the door. It was wide open, but there was nobody there. I didn't hear anybody leave. My whole body was concentrated on this thing. It couldn't have just left without making a noise on the wooden floor. I was just standing upright on my bed. My brain didn't know what was going on. It didn't make sense. Why was I scared? Why was the door open? Did it open because of the wind? That never happened before. It wasn't even that windy. So how did it open? Why was I scared? Was there something? Was it all a dream? But it didn't feel like a dream. I still remember everything. So I was still sure that it was just my roommate. So I yelled out his name. But there was no response. So I did it again. Nothing. I called him on my phone that was beside me. He picked up, sounding really tired. I asked him if he was in the house. No, I told you. I'm sleeping at a friend's today. I asked him to stay on the phone because I heard somebody in the house. I walk around and nothing is missing or disturbed. Everything is still in its same place. Our front door is closed and it looks just like it was me alone in the house the whole time. I say sorry to him for waking him up and he's a bit angry, but then just ends the call. And I get my keys and wallet and leave the house. I talked with my friends and everybody told me it was sleep paralysis or a panic attack or a dream. But it can't be. Sleep paralysis, I was still able to move for a bit and it was like I couldn't move. My fear made it unable to move. Panic attack, I know how one feels like, and it's not like that. Also, if I have a panic attack, there's always a trigger. I had a traumatic past, and if some special things happen to me, like somebody touching my back for too long, I can get a panic attack. But there was no such trigger. Dream? I didn't wake up, like if it would out of a nightmare. Also, I can still remember every detail. These events all happened a few years ago while I was in college, and it was over the course of a few months while I was pet sitting at different times. In college, I did a lot of pet sitting for extra money. It was a great side job. Get paid to hang out with dogs and take care of them. Nice. A lot of the time I would stay at the person's house because it helped the dogs stay calm to have someone with them, and because the owner wanted to make sure nothing went wrong with their house while they were gone. So there was one house. It was old and in a very quiet neighborhood. As in, I don't think anyone in the neighborhood was under the age of 55 or 60, and I very rarely even heard cars on the roads. The backyard was very deep and had a ton of trees, so you couldn't see your backyard neighbor because of all the foliage, and both houses to the side were empty. One was under construction, the other was a rental that was empty and stayed empty for months. I'm pretty sure the lady who owned the house I was helping with said the owner was very sick. But again, this was years ago, I may be misremembering. Either way, the neighborhood noise factor was absolutely zero, which was great for a big old dog and a student trying to study. Now, onto the weird bits. This house was close enough to my university that I could swing by during my breaks between classes to let the dog out. One day, right around noon, I was standing in the dining room sorting the owner's mail, junk mail ads she had asked me to throw away. On the table, there was an unopened, full £20 bag of dog food. It was near the centre of the table. The walls of the dining room were about 3 feet from the edge of the table, enough to walk around and scoot a chair out, but not large. Anyway, I'm standing there, still, sorting the mail. My dog is laying at my feet, also still. There are no cars driving by, no air, no draft, and this £20 bag of dog food suddenly goes flying off the table, hard enough to hit the wall. It went parallel to the floor, hit the wall, and dropped down. Not like it just fell over and hit the floor. It looked like it had been swept off the table, or thrown somehow. But nothing in the entire house was moving. The AC wasn't even on. I remember, because I had been considering turning it on for the afternoon, in case the dog got hot. I had to get back to class, but I didn't understand how it could have happened. How does a full bag of dog food fly something like 4 or 5 feet so fast and hit the wall so hard? The next time I was there, a few weeks later, this owner travelled a bit for work. I was there frequently. I was feeding the dog. Now, this dog is old, so he had a metal food stand for his bowls so he didn't have to bend down so far. You could always hear when he was eating or drinking because the food bowls would clank against the stand. This time, I heard the clanking for a while and thought it was weird that the dog was taking so long to eat his dinner. Usually he was very quick about it. I had been getting my stuff set up to start my homework and could still hear the clanking. I didn't think anything of it. Maybe he was getting a really long drink, I thought. Until I looked down and realised the dog was right next to me, and I could still hear the clanking. I got up to see what was going on, but the second I turned the corner and could see the food bowls, the clanking stopped. I checked if the bowls were over or under a vent or if a window was open. I checked if there were any cars going by, but I hadn't heard anything. And I was closer to the road getting my homework set up than the dog bowl was by a significant amount. Also, the sound was very rhythmic. I thought a dog was eating after all, and it was late enough that the construction crew next door had wrapped up hours before. It also stopped the second I saw the bowl. Not before and not after. After that, I asked my girlfriend to come stay with me while I was there. One night, we were hanging out watching Netflix and petting the dog. We decided to go to bed and pause the show. It was about 1 a.m. Just a reminder, both houses to the side were empty, and the backside neighbour was too far away to even see. After a moment or so of silence, both my girlfriend and I and the dog heard a voice speaking. The dog perked his head up and was looking between the front door and back doors. My girlfriend heard the noise from around the front door. I heard it from around the back, near the dining room, with the table and dog bowls. The sound was fairly distinctively someone speaking, but it sounded muffled, like from another room. We looked out the windows, but there were no other lights on in the neighbourhood, and we heard no cars. Like I said, old person neighbourhood. We didn't see anyone outside, despite the streetlights and clear lines of sight. No one could get into the rental property. It was padlocked up tight, and you could see pretty well through the gutter construction, and there wasn't anyone there either. The dog also couldn't pinpoint where the sound was coming from. Had it been a car driving by or a radio, the house was dead center of a long residential road, and the only other road dead-ended directly into this house. As in, if the curtains weren't drawn, oncoming headlights from this road would be blinding. But there weren't any headlights or tail lights on the road, and no car noises that we could hear. Other than a few random things, the last thing that happened was the next time I stayed there. My girlfriend and I were getting ready. She was in the bathroom. I was getting dressed in the bedroom right next door. There was a small hallway between the two doors, and we both heard a woman's voice scream my name, but it sounded faint, but the sound was originating from the hallway. My name is fairly unique, and that was also the only sound. Had it been someone outside yelling, which the sound acoustics would have had to be insane for it to sound that way in the interior hallway of another house at least 2 houses away. I imagine we also would have heard something else they were yelling. Both my girlfriend and I stepped out of the rooms we were in, independently of the other. We both heard it and hadn't said anything ourselves. I don't know if the dog heard this one. He wasn't in my line of sight. The last thing that I remember happening was the last night I stayed there. I was by myself. This one is a little weird because I was asleep, so take that as you will. I easily could have been dreaming, but it was still odd, so I'm including it. Typically, when I fall asleep, nothing in the world will wake me up. I have to be very careful with my alarms. Dogs barking, sirens, storms. I've slept through it all. This last night, though, I woke up completely. You know how you're normally groggy when you wake up? I'm normally that times 10. But in the middle of the night, I woke up from a dead sleep, not even dreaming that I can remember. Completely and totally awake and lucid. I didn't open my eyes, though. Maybe just a bad feeling? I was asleep near the edge of the bed, and I heard what I assumed was the same woman's voice. It sounded like it was coming from the edge of the bed, like someone was crouched there talking to me. This bedroom is far removed from the front and back doors where I heard the sound before, but it was the same, like a woman speaking but from a different room, just somehow closer. I didn't open my eyes at any point. The way I saw it, there was either going to be something there, or there wasn't, and either way, it wasn't going to be good. So I just rolled over and went back to sleep. I asked the owner, and she said that she definitely thought the place was haunted. Now, people I have told this story to have offered a few suggestions, and yes, this house did have a basement. But the only thing down there was a washer and dryer, which I never used and were never on while I was there. The owner had also had most of the insulation in the house replaced, so I don't know that it could be rats or mice in the walls. I heard many squirrels and small animals on the roof, and none of the sounds matched what I heard. None of the appliances did either. Like I said, I stayed there a lot. I got used to the regular sounds of the house, and I imagine the dog was even more used to the regular sounds, and he reacted a few times to the unexpected. Street noise was easy to keep track of, there was very, very little, and the construction crew next door worked regular hours, about 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and it was a very safe neighbourhood overall, the type of neighbourhood with quaint houses and rose trellises. That gives you an idea. There were a few other odd incidents, weird bruising, lights flickering, creaks, but those are easily explainable. Wood floors, old house with weird lights, and me being in a somewhat unfamiliar place and probably bumping into more things than usual. I wouldn't consider those as anything too odd. At this house, I slept with my door slightly open to let light in. I don't know why I did this exactly, because now I have to sleep in pitch darkness. But I think it was something to do with the fact I was seeing people in the corner of my room. Just purple shadowy figures. Normally just walking or moving in a way that looked like they were chatting. It was often just out of the corner of my eye in the corner of my room, or when I had woken from a dream. I chalked it up to sleep paralysis. Then one night, I was laying in bed and everyone had gone to sleep. My room is situated where you have to walk past it down the hall to get to my sister's. And at the end of the hall is the garage or storage area. My sister had already gone to bed, passing me and wishing me good night as she did so. So I was confused when I saw her walk past my doorway again, the tiny bit of light from the nightlight in the hall illuminating her back. I got up, curious, and called to her. "Sister Name, what are you up to?" She kept walking. I got out of bed and peeked my head around the corner. I saw her walking toward the garage door, so I called out again, "Sister Name?" She opened the door and shut it behind her. I presumed she was out of it or was just playing a joke on me, so I ran over and opened the garage door. Our garage was a square, with nothing to hide behind. It had a small staircase to an area above, and the garage below. You could see the area above as you entered. I didn't see her in the upper level, so I ducked into the garage and looked around. She wasn't there. Confused, I wondered if she had somehow hidden in the upper level whilst I looked below and had left. But the door wasn't one that could really close without being heard, so I left the garage and opened my sister's room. She was in bed, her phone on her lap, mindlessly scrolling. She looked up at me, confused. "What's up?" "Did you just walk down the hall then into the garage? How did you leave without me seeing you?" "I haven't left my bed since you said good night to me from your room." "Oh, right. Well, I just saw the shadowy silhouette of you go down the hallway and into the garage before vanishing." "And you followed it? I thought it was you." "Weird. Must be the spooky spirits, I guess." My sister and I never really believed in standard ghosts and had made up the crack theory that the people I saw were just spirits from a different timeline accidentally slipping into ours. So this experience never really scared me. Honestly, I just thought it was cool, lol. This was the last experience I had in that house before leaving, and haven't seen any figures in my new place. Though a clock that had no batteries did start ticking during the night. But hey, it was probably just a strange clock. This happened about 7 or 8 times in the last few months. I would wake up and immediately freak out because I felt someone was in my bedroom. I'd sit up and know exactly where to look, which was either at the end of my bed, in the middle of the room, or on the right side of the bed. The last one is the creepiest because I remember waking up multiple times and feeling someone right next to me on the bed. I'm single and sleep alone, so the feeling of someone else laying right beside me gave me instant panic because no one should be there in the first place. When these encounters happened, I'd sometimes see a black outline for a second after waking up and looking up at the location where I left it. I'm going to be honest and say that I'm actually a big skeptic on the rational side of me doesn't believe in paranormal stuff. But I've actually experienced some paranormal stuff in middle school, which I just brushed it off and kept it to myself. But that's another story that I'm certain isn't related to this one. Despite my rational side not believing in this all, the other part is questioning whether or not something is really going on. I told my friends about this presence I've been sensing exactly a month ago, and after that, the whole thing stopped. I thought the presence being just left and I completely forgot all about it. I would wake up normally and not feel anyone in my room anymore. Until today. I woke up around 6 a.m., got myself some water, and went back to sleep. And then I saw a dream. I woke up and immediately felt someone on my right side of my bed. Turning around, I saw the presence I had felt before. But this time, the shadowy figure remained there and didn't disappear as usual. Although I should mention that it was 1/3 of the size that I'd seen before. I freaked out and tried to get up, but my body and limbs felt weak, and it was difficult to move them around. It wasn't restricting, just heavy and difficult. Still freaking out, I told the presence to leave me alone, even yelled at it, but it didn't. It had this very scary, negative spine-chilling energy to it, and knowing that it was right beside me was not nice. I tried pushing it away, and I think I even tried fighting it, but it attacked me back. It bit my fingers, and I could feel it, like literally feel its teeth sinking into my bones. I panicked more. It all felt super real, and I was 100% sure this was all reality. But despite it all, I wondered if perhaps I was experiencing sleep paralysis. I started thinking back to all my Google searches about sleep paralysis and spirits, and how to get rid of them. Those were the two thoughts that I had about the situation at hand. I kept repeating to myself, it's all a dream, it's not real. And I even sunk my nails into my arm to basically pinch myself awake. But nothing happened, which confirmed that it was real, which it clearly wasn't. I finally managed to stand up from the bed and decided to get away from the shadow, but it followed me. I ran all the way to the kitchen and then I woke up for real, in the same pose I had woken up in my dream. I think it was a sleep paralysis, or something between that and being half awake. I've never experienced sleep paralysis before, never ever. I've also never seen a dream as detailed and realistic as this one. I even saw my phone charging right beside my bed, which I put to charge at 6 a.m. after getting my water. But maybe it was more than just a dream. As a child, I used to have these kind of next level deja vus. I would have a dream just once, and sometimes the same dream many times over, and I knew this sequence of events was going to happen. I would remember the words being said, the vibe of the moment, the way the ball was going to bounce. I would then remember that sequence over and over again, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. I would always think to myself, oh yeah, that thing. I wonder when it's finally going to happen, because it got annoying at times. Most of the dreams were stuff like knowing exactly what kind of kick-ass save I was going to make at a soccer goal. But some were more sinister. I knew, for example, that I was going to get bullied at some point, and that I'd have no friends for months and months. At about 10, I prepared for this the only way I knew how, which was inventing soccer mini-games so that I could still play soccer when the time of no friends came around. And sure enough, I did get bullied years later. All of these dreams, or whatever you might call them, came true, just as I knew they would. But one of them hasn't yet. It's by far the scariest one of them. It's adult me, saw the dreams many times as a kid, and my dad in a park. We talk about the fact that my mom will be here soon, and we will then go to a certain place. I can't remember where. But instead of going there as a group, my dad takes an alternative route by the shore so we can see some of the boats. He walks away from us down this boulevard with tall trees on each side. When he is about 50 meters away from us, walking with his hands behind his back, I look back at him and for some reason know that I will never see him again. and my heart is filled with pain as if he had just died. I know those were the last words he ever spoke to me, and for some odd reason, I'm certain that there is nothing I can do to stop whatever is going to happen. I used to cry every time I reminded myself of this as a kid. I remember this sometimes when we were in a situation close to this, in a park near water somewhere. I always get emotional in my head, sometimes even a tear. My father served in the Royal Military Police and left the army 4 years ago after 30 years of service. We're from the UK. My father had always been a very serious man, worked very hard, and the little humour he has is very dry. He's travelled the world with his work and experienced all manner of life. He's the last person to believe in the paranormal. So just over 10 years ago, he was on a posting in Germany, the last of the British troops before all the bases were closed. He had moved into a big old house. The house was where Hermann Goering, head of the German Luftwaffe, lived. My father lived there with 3 other high-ranking officers from different regiments, all of which mostly kept to themselves. After 4 months, he happened to have a weekend alone in the house. In the evening, he was sat downstairs watching TV, when he heard footsteps coming down the stairs and into the hallway. He thought nothing of it, until the 4th time he had heard someone come down the stairs. He assumed one of his housemates had returned from leave early. He had gone to look, but there was nothing there, and after checking the rest of the house, he went to bed. The following 2 nights, the same thing happened, but my father put the noise down to it being an old house with creaky floors. Monday morning, he reported the noise, along with a draft in the bathroom and a leaky tap, to the site's maintenance office. His housemates had returned, and he had forgotten all about it. A couple of weeks later, he happened to mention the noises he had heard to the old German cleaner. She said in the most matter-of-fact way, that was Cedric. It turns out Cedric was a Polish prisoner of war who used to work in the house. He was sadly beaten to death in the house, and it was believed his spirit has remained in the house ever since. The cleaner told my father that Cedric walks the stairs early every evening and makes occasional noises or gusts of wind during the day. My father told us occasionally about noises, etc., that could have been Cedric, but none of us believed him. He learnt the ways of Cedric. There was never any flair or imagination to his stories, just simply there is a ghost that wanders around my house. 6 months later, I went to Germany for a work experience placement near to where my father was based. He picked me up from the airport and took me to the house where he lived. I stayed the night there, and there was no sign or mention of this so-called Cedric. In the morning, I was going for a shower when my father said, "Don't worry about the wind, it's just Cedric, but he means no harm." I thought he was winding me up, but I still put a towel under the door to avoid any drafts. I had just about finished my shower, about to go, and he'd tell my father his made-up ghost doesn't exist, when this breeze or gust of wind, whatever it was, blew right through me. It was like nothing I had experienced or known since then. It left me cold for the rest of the day. I grabbed my towel and raced out into the bedroom. I got changed, packed my bags, and walked out of that house. I believe it to be the only paranormal thing I've experienced. Thinking back, I cannot see how that could have been a draft or my father winding me up. I don't know what it was, but I do know there was definitely a presence in that house. My grandparents have been married for over 65 years, and my grandmother never worked a day in her life, except keeping up the house and taking care of 4 kids and 5 grandkids. My grandfather was a carpenter in the Air Force for 20 years, and retired and went to work in the paper mill till he was 65. They got married when they were 16, and the only wedding present they got was a hand-built oak chest of drawers that a family friend made them. Let me tell you, it took 3 men to pick it up. It's that heavy. My grandmother died of scleroderma a few years ago and left my grandfather behind to fend for himself. This man has never had to lift a knife to butter on bread or cook a potato when she was alive. Sadly, he died a year later of heart attack, but I think it was heartache. They left all the grandkids money, but one of our uncles took the money and ran, and hasn't been seen since. I wanted something of theirs so that I'd have something to remember them by, and I could possibly pass it down to one of my kids. So, I took the chest of drawers. It took 3 of us to put it on a U-Haul and get it home. I was excited to have something of theirs, and might I remind you, almost 70 years old, and the only thing that was updated on it was probably the handles. Fast forward to a month after having it. It's about 1 a.m. I'm laying in bed, and the wife is sleeping next to me. And I suffer from insomnia anyways. My son's room is cater corner from our room across the hallway, and the bathroom is directly across us with a nightlight. The light is just bright enough so that you can see to go to the bathroom. I see a shadow walk by and block out the light for a sec, and I freeze, not knowing what to do. And I wait to see if my dog will bark, but nothing. I end up getting up to find nothing in the house. This happens over the next few months. Sometimes the shadow stops and looks at me, or just keeps walking. One night, I'm putting my 5-year-old at the time to bed, and he tells me that his great-grandmother was talking to him, which he's never met her. He's telling me how much that he doesn't like her, but he won't tell me what she said to him. My wife never did like the dresser, and had been wanting me to get rid of it for some time now. It sits in the spare room with a blanket over the mirror. You might ask, why did I put a blanket over it? Well, you see, ever since I did that, whatever is on the other side of that mirror has stopped showing up in my house. Now, I have only seen shadows and my wife never saw anything, but it seemed to be evil when it came to my son. The shit he would tell me sometimes would make a dead person wake up. As a child at the age of 4, my family moved into a newly constructed house in the middle of Tennessee, and this is where my first contact with entities happened. One of the first nights I was there, I will always remember walking into my parents' walk-in closet. As I walked in, I felt a cool, refreshing wind blow over me and saw an entity that looked like a man made of TV static standing in the doorway to the attic. I felt completely at peace and happy. However, I ended up passing out in the closet and pissing all over my mom's shoes. Later on, as I grew to be about 14, I saw a burned face and manacled hands floating into my room by my door. I remembered thinking that this thing hated me and everything about me, and the intensity of its malevolence made me pass out. The next day, I would walk through the area where the entity appeared and occasionally see it out of the corner of my eyes. I would routinely see shadows moving out of the corner of my eyes of men in big hats and cats and dogs. One day I saw these shadows and all of a sudden my sisters screamed bloody murder. I ran into their room and saw movement out of my peripherals fleeing. My sister said a big cat, not our cats, jumped on her and pinned her down. Both of my sisters saw it as well. One day, when I was babysitting my sisters, the oven, brand new, suddenly locked and caught fire within, not responding to button inputs or anything. The fire alarm system went off, and I called my dad to come home and he turned the gas off under the oven. There was no explanation for the oven incident whatsoever. My friend, a local, told me that at the site of our house, 3 older houses had burned down in that spot. Strange occurrences continued at the house, doors opening and shutting. My sister told me recently that she saw once I left for the military. I hadn't told her about my face experience. That she had seen out of her window while she was reading on her phone, lightning flash and the silhouette of a ladder falling. And then a mangled face pressed itself to the screen of the window. She knew the face hated her as well. The basement where I moved as a 16-year-old also was a weird environment. I once dreamed that the walls were closing in and ran upstairs in my dream to wake up on the couch upstairs. My best friend and I, under no influence of drugs, also simultaneously hallucinated that we were in a McDonald's. The basement seemed to always amplify hysteria and cause people to act out of character. At a party for high school students we threw, a normally mild-mannered kid freaked and for no apparent reason punched a pregnant classmate. Also, I had a scary dream about my grandpa being a giant in my basement laughing at me. The next day, I found out he had died that night. I don't know if this is relevant, but he was a Mason. I dread visiting my parents at this point because of this house. While they were very kind and loving when I was younger, by my teens they had become abusive narcissists and boundary-crossing maniacs. And quite frankly, I'm worried about them both. My dad, formerly a devout Christian, had been visiting spirit mediums, which I found out through a reliable source. They also refused to admit our house is haunted. And that's simply the house. I also had a crazy Ouija board experience in high school. Me and a group of friends went to the oldest building at school and started playing. For some reason, at the time I was skeptical about this process and not taking it seriously. Maybe to impress the ladies. Anyway, as the five of us started to play, we asked, "Is there anyone there?" Y-E-S. "What's your name?" C-O-B. Then I started laughing about it. "Don't worry, y'all, it's Conan the Cob Man. He's related to the Jolly Green Giants, don't you know?" And suddenly the planchette whips to no. Corpses of Belial. Not sure if that's the name exactly, it was something really similar. Don't sleep alone. Except for you, me. Then we asked it, "Are you a good spirit?" It says, "No, don't sleep alone. We are legion." So obviously we try to say goodbye, and the planchette whips in infinity symbols across the board. We kept begging it to leave, but it kept saying no. And it says, "Brendan says hi from hell." As soon as it says that, my friend whips her hands off the planchette and starts bawling. Apparently that was the name of her dead brother. No one knew about Brandon before this session. We eventually got it to say goodbye after 4 hours, and before we signed off, the spirit said things will be very bad for all of you. Strange events started happening to all of us, including me, even though it told me I was okay to sleep alone. I dreamt I saw myself sewn to the ceiling of the basement that night from flayed skin and was woken up several times by the sounds of chains dragging. The next day, me and the rest of the group were blessed by my friend's dad's girlfriend using incense. However, she said she sensed intense evil energy hovering around us. In the next 3 years, I was arrested 3 times, went to jail twice, was suspended from high school, kicked out of college, almost died in a car accident, and was forced to join the Navy to avoid criminal charges. Although the intensity in my life has died down a lot since then, I often feel followed and watched and see dead cats out of the corner of my eyes as well. My questions would be, what would you guys' expert opinion be on these happenings around the potential of a curse? What would be the curse of these occurrences? What can I do to protect my family and myself? Do you think there could be a root occult cause of my parents' personality change? I should start by saying that I'm 18, female, and that my parents are divorced, and have been divorced since I was 3. I lived in Texas with my mom until I was 8, and I believe it's when I moved back to California, where I was born, that this experience started happening. I'm not really sure when it exactly happened. It honestly could have been started when I was living in Texas, but sometimes in the morning, while me and my mom would get ready, I would hear a very distinctive ding sound. It sounded a lot like a bell, but always caught my attention too, and always sounded exactly the same. I assumed it would have come from my mom's room, since she was the only other person in the house with me. I always thought it was a noise from her dresser because she had glass plates holding her jewellery and perfume. but I'm not sure if I ever saw her at her dresser whenever I would hear the ding sound. I remember asking her one day about the dinging noise and what in her room made it, and she said nothing in her room made that noise. Like I said, it was something so clear and loud to me, and immediately when I heard it, I recognized it. I just brushed it off because it wasn't every day either, and just happened once in the morning. But I did heavily associate my mom to this bell-like sound. A few years later, my dad and step planned a New Year's trip with their friends to go to Arizona. So basically, they rented a huge house where everyone would stay. And it was mostly for the grown-ups to drink and do whatever, while me and my younger siblings would try to entertain ourselves. I believe I was 14 at the time, but the most important thing to remember is that I'm with my dad, and my mom is back in California. Me and my siblings shared a room. Me and my brother got the single beds in the room, and my sister slept on an air mattress in between us. The room we were in was connected to the kitchen, and the other rooms were nowhere close to ours. Being a teenager, I was up late on my phone during the night while my two siblings were fast asleep. I believe it was the first night, but I was doing something on my phone. I can't remember what exactly. And I heard the ding come from somewhere in the house. It did sound pretty far away in the house, so I thought maybe someone had the same thing as my mom. But it was dead silent in the house, and most likely, everyone was asleep. It was a quick ding, and I couldn't put any thought into it. The next night was probably the scariest experience I've ever had. It was around 1 or 2 a.m., and I was on my phone, and probably the only one awake at that hour. I was just minding my business when I heard the ding again, coming from somewhere in the house. Of course, I noticed it, but went back to what I was doing. Then I heard it again, and again, and again. The same ding, sounding exactly the same, and the pause between each ding was the same. I don't remember ever hearing the ding more than once at a time, but it just kept going, and then I realized it was moving. I could hear it coming from somewhere distant in the house and coming closer to where I was. It sounded like it was floating to me, or something was carrying it to me. Now I should say that the door was wide open to the room I was in, and whilst froze, once I realized it was moving. I never felt so much fear in my life, and when I heard the dinging entering the kitchen, I hid under the covers and tried to pretend I was asleep. It entered my room, and it was super loud at this point. Granted, I was shaking and terrified, but the dinging never moved from the door of the bed, and stayed there for about 2 minutes, just dinging over and over again. I believe it was watching me. Finally, I heard it leave the room and disappeared into the house, and I fell asleep right after. I should also say I never heard any footsteps or anything other than the dinging, just the damn dinging over and over again. I told my parents about it in the morning, but they didn't believe me at all. I haven't heard it again ever since that night, and it's a certain ding that I've never heard anywhere else, and hopefully won't ever hear again. I really have no idea what it could be. The only conclusion I have is maybe it was something that followed me until I was 14. It couldn't have been connected to my mom since she wasn't even in Arizona at the time. I sometimes regret not looking up from under the covers, or even taking a video so I could have audio of this noise. If anyone has any idea what it could be, please let me know. I can't find anything about it, and I've been curious about this for so long.